Chapter 23. A Gesture of Goodwill. Much to my surprise, we were allowed a day's holiday on the Sunday of Spring Festival, as well as being allowed to finish at 6:30 on the Saturday evening. Quite a few of the workers from the local factories went home, some of them taking extra days of unpaid leave. By then, I had been paid half wages for 2 more weeks, but at least there had been no further unforeseen deductions. On the Friday before Spring Festival weekend, Mr. Wang called us in one by one as usual, only to announce that wages would henceforward be paid monthly in arrears and that the week just gone by would be included in the first month. We were to receive no money that day, nor indeed until the end of the following 3 weeks. The delight we all felt at the thought of a day off was immediately obliterated by the fact that some workers no longer had enough money to go home. "They're doing it so that anyone who goes home is forced to return," raged Dong-Ying, who had herself planned to visit her parents, but could now only afford the fare. "How can I go home and eat my parents' food without contributing a penny to the cost?" "I'm sure they would still prefer to see you," reasoned Li Mei, "even if you go home empty-handed. An extra mouth for 2 days will not make a lot of difference." "But I wanted to treat them. I was relying upon this week's wages to buy them something special." "For them, nothing will be more special than a visit from their only daughter," Li Mei urged. Dong-Ying allowed herself to be persuaded and set off for the station in the early hours of Saturday morning. Li Mei, Song Shiru, Shen and Qing and I tried to console ourselves by making plans for our own Sunday. Everywhere in town would be closed, so we would have to entertain ourselves. Mrs. Wang had announced that there would be a special feast in the canteen on Saturday, and notices went up encouraging those of us who were staying to take part in a talent show on Sunday afternoon. My friends started to chatter about what we might do. I couldn't help feeling that all I wanted to do was sleep the day away, so that I could block out the invading images of my mother and Li Hu at home without me, so that I wouldn't have to remember the spring festivals gone by when father was still alive, when we used to sing our way to market to sell our pig and come back laden with special treats, because Spring Festival was a time of national celebration, a time to be extravagant, a time to forget about hardship, when we used to eat and laugh and go to the village for the parade, and eat and laugh some more, and wait for the firecrackers at midnight, when we were so happy that nothing could burst our bubble of joy. The determined enthusiasm of my friends wore down my resistance, and I found myself agreeing to take part in a playlet based upon The Bridge of Magpies, a popular folk tale, which we were going to put together on the Sunday morning. I was to play a princess, separated from her husband by the river of stars that divides the northern skies from the southern kingdom of the heavens. Only once a year, on the 7th day of the 7th month, is she allowed to be by his side, when all the magpies on earth fly up to heaven and form a bridge over the river of stars. Shen and Qing was to be the prince, Song Shiru the king, and Li Mei the narrator. After we had finished work on Saturday, we headed back to the dormitory, each of us full of our own faraway thoughts, but all of us wanting to be family to each other. "We may not be able to be at home with our families, but I'd rather be here with my friends than anywhere else," said Li Mei, voicing how we all felt. We were surprised to find brightly coloured cutouts of fish and birds hanging from the door and windows. "They are making an effort," said Shen and Qing sarcastically. "Probably paid for with our wages," grimaced Song. "Take it as a gesture of goodwill," said Li Mei, "or we'll make ourselves miserable, and I for one don't want to be miserable, not tonight, not tomorrow." We changed for dinner, dressing ourselves up as though we were going out somewhere special. Dong-Ying had left a spare pair of trousers and a blouse for me to wear, and Shen and Qing lent me her jewel-encrusted slide. Song Shiru insisted that I put on some lipstick. "You're going to be 12 in 2 weeks' time. Feel what it's like to be a woman for one evening. Prepare for your metamorphosis into a princess tomorrow." She painted my lips and held a mirror in front of me. I was shocked by the transformation. It was extraordinary how a little smudge of red could add years to my age. "Give us a pout," said Shen and Qing. I puckered my lips and we dissolved with laughter. "You'll do," chuckled Li Mei. "Come on, let's have fun." We did have fun. The workers who had stayed behind and who normally used the other canteen were to use our canteen that weekend, adding to the noisy air of festivity. The canteen ceiling had been decorated with huge red lanterns. The tables were covered with red cloths and large colourful fish, birds and animals made of paper covered the walls. Everyone had dressed up, and a party atmosphere was evident the minute we entered the room. A table at the front of the room was covered with a gold cloth and had 2 white ibises carved from turnips as a centrepiece. "Looks like we've got special guests," said Shen and Qing, admiring the centrepiece, which was beautiful. "There's nothing special about the Wangs," said Song Shiru. She shut up quickly when Li Mei prodded her in the back and nodded towards the door. Mr. Wang entered and waddled self-importantly across the room, followed by Mrs. Wang, mincing in his wake, followed by his strutting managers and supervisors. We waited for a cue from him, then took our places at our own tables. Waiters immediately danced attention upon the top table guests, serving each with sweet red wine. Large bottles of beer were placed on our tables. This was the first time we had ever been allowed alcohol. The bottles were passed round quickly, everyone eager to make the most of this rare treat from the Wangs. Mr. Wang raised a first toast to the health of his company. "Just sip, Luciane," warned Li Mei. "There could be many toasts, and you'll be expected to join in with them all." I did as she said, which wasn't difficult because I had no taste for the bitter, pale amber liquid before me. Then the food began to arrive. Enormous platters of chicken, beef, duck, fish and dumplings were carried ceremoniously to the top table. The dishes deposited on our tables were smaller and less varied, but still the food was delicious compared with our normal fare. Stiff and restricted at first by the presence of the Wangs, the workers gradually relaxed and the noise levels rose again. Conversations grew louder and louder amongst the males, and the girls grew giggly under the influence of the beer. The toasts came thick and fast, to the kindness of the factory owner, to the good fortune of the workers to be in his employ, to the health and wealth of the factory owner and his wife, to an increase in orders, to an increase in profits. Shen and Qing, giggly herself by now, leant over to me and raised her glass. "May he slip on a banana skin," she chuckled. "May he choke on his own self-importance." I raised my own glass to that and drank deeply, spluttering as the bubbles caught the back of my throat. I lowered the glass and felt a hand on my shoulder. A head pressed against mine and a voice whispered, "Are you still doing what they say?" I turned to see the boy from the karaoke bar disappearing towards a table at the back of the room. I was so shocked that the colour must have drained from my face. "You look as if you've seen a ghost," chuckled Song. "Is it the beer doing that?" I tried to shrug it off. So what if he was there? So what if that meant that he worked in one of the factories? What could he do? I was with friends. They would look after me, but I couldn't help glancing round every so often to make sure that he was still at his table, worried that he might approach me again. I lost my appetite for the delicious food, and the cheerful buffoonery of the evening failed now to embrace me. Li Mei put her hand over mine. "Too many sips?" she smiled at me. "Or too many sad thoughts?" I didn't have to answer. Mr. Wang banged on the table for attention and rose to make a speech. I heard little of it, except to register that it was largely self-congratulatory, but contained one small word of thanks to us, his workers, before ending with a final toast to himself and his wife for hosting such a magnificent spring festival celebration. We left the canteen arm in arm to the sounds of firecrackers ringing in our ears from all over the town and the nearby countryside. The new year had begun. I had been away from home for 7 long months. We slept late into the following morning, blissful in the knowledge that our time was our own. When finally we roused ourselves, slowly, delicately, the talk in the dormitory moved from the unexpected extravagance of the Wangs in providing the previous night's banquet, to their extraordinary arrogance, to the talent show and what a cheap way it was of keeping us entertained. We didn't mind. It was fun finding out who was going to do what and hearing them practice. Li Mei took us outside to run through the bridge of magpies. It was cold but bearable. There was shadow from the previous evening drifted across my mind and made me shiver. "Our little princess will freeze waiting for her prince," smiled Song Shiru. We stopped at lunchtime and headed for the canteen, where the decorations were still hanging, but the food had reverted to normal. On our way back to the dormitory to ready ourselves for our afternoon performance, a sullen-faced girl called Zheng Yi grabbed my arm and spat in my ear. "Keep away from my boyfriend, kid, or I'll make you sorry." She pushed her way past me and into the dormitory before I could say a word. I couldn't have said anything. I was too dumbfounded. What boyfriend? She could only have meant my tormentor from the karaoke bar, but I had done nothing to encourage him. She must have seen him approach me last night, but I hadn't encouraged that either. I hesitated outside, no longer wanting to go in, until Li Mei came to find me to begin my transformation into a princess. I sat on my bed while Shen and Qing applied my makeup. I kept my eyes averted from the corner of the room where Zheng Yi had her bed, but I felt her watching me, hating me. When I stood to change my clothes, I caught sight of her whispering to her friends, pointing to me. Suddenly, the dormitory was no longer a safe haven. I wished now I didn't have to perform at the talent show, but I went along so as not to disappoint my friends. The tables had been removed from the canteen, and a makeshift platform erected at one end of the room. Our supervisor was in charge of the running order, and told us we would be the fifth to go on. We sat near the back to watch the other acts, a dance with ribbons, a singing duet, a man on a flute, a plate spinner, not very successful. Everyone cheered enthusiastically as each act ended. Then it was our turn. We made our way to the platform, and as I turned to face the audience, I saw him, right in the front row, staring at me. Next to him was Zheng Yi, who was watching his every move. I wanted to run away there and then, and when it came to the part in our play where the princess cries at having to leave her prince for another whole year, I cried for real, and wished I could throw myself into the river of stars and disappear forever. As soon as we had finished, I leapt from the platform and ran to the door. I wasn't quick enough. Zheng Yi followed and caught up with me outside. She grabbed me by the hair and pulled me round the back of the canteen. "I told you to keep away from him," she screamed. "I saw you looking him up and down. I saw you giving him the come on with those crocodile tears. I ought to kill you." "Please let go, Zheng Yi," I pleaded. "You're wrong. I haven't done anything, I promise." "You must think I'm stupid," she snarled, tugging my hair again so that my head lurched backwards. "What are you doing here anyway? Spilled water, are you? Mummy didn't want you. Pity she didn't flush you clean away." She pushed me to the ground and stood above me. "You might think life is difficult enough here already, but I can make it even more difficult, believe me. This is just the start."